Hello everyone. So today in this video we are going to discuss providers. So what are providers? So Flutter has providers for specific purpose, and providers are nothing but they are a type of service provider. So what type of service do they provide? So they provide lightweight state management service. In most of the places you will find that providers are basically a wrapper around inherited widgets. So what are again inherited widgets? So inherited widgets also has the same function, that they provide lightweight state management services. So we can directly say that the providers are also used for same purpose, that is lightweight state management services. So if you are familiar with the state management thing, then you must be knowing that whenever there is change in state, it also makes the UI update. So similar to that, here also like Flutter rebuilds the UI whenever there is change in state, and this is done with the help of providers. So let me define providers the way I have written here. So it is like Flutter providers are type of service provider which provide service of lightweight state management. They allow to share same state by multiple components. That is, if there are many components, they can share a same state, and whenever there is change in state, all the components get updated by the change. So whenever there is a change in state, the components gets rebuilt, and inherited widgets are also same, and providers are nothing but they are easy to use. So for that purpose they are built, and they are basically the wrapper around inherited widgets. So theoretically we have understood. Now we will see like how they work practically. So here I have a skeletal app, the default app that is there when we build a Flutter application, and what we get is basically a counter app. And let's rebuild this and see how it's working. Already many of you know that how it works, but still we will see how it's working at present. So I have my Android device connected to my development machine, and once the app is built, we can see the running app on the device. So while the build is going on, let me discuss that what we are going to do. So we are going to modify this skeletal application to be used in the way of provider. So instead of the stateful widgets that are used here, if you see here, yeah, so here we are using basically stateful widgets to update the counter. So instead of using stateful widgets, what we will do is that we will be using providers. so that we can understand how providers work and what type of services do they provide. If you are looking for a high level state management for bigger applications, then we have other options in Flutter, and the provider state management is suitable for specific type of state management service which we are going to see here, and it is very important and very useful. So it's important to understand that how providers work. I'm going to do more applications on providers, using providers, so that's why I'm doing this first, so that we have a base of understanding that how actually providers work. So here our app is running, and you can see that there is a counter which is showing 0. If I tap on the plus button, then every time it increases by 1. So this is how our counter is working. When we update our application, even after the update, this functionality will be same. The only difference will be that how it's being executed. So now the first thing that we are going to do is that we will create a module and a class to handle the increment of the counter, and every time there is increment, it will notify our main module about the increment or the change in state. So let's first create a new class. So we will name it counter provider. I think that will be an appropriate name. Counter provider dot, and here we will first import the material package, because the material package has change notifier class that we will be using later. So let's import the package. So it's underlined by blue because we are yet not using this imported package. Let's start with the class counter provider, and we will extend change notifier and this is the magical class that will help us to notify whenever there is update in the counter. So here we will declare a private property or a variable counter, and next thing that we will do is that we will declare a function to get the value of the counter. Sorry. So this private, we will get the value in the private variable or private property, and now the function that will update the counter and also notify. And every time it's getting updated, we will call notify listener so that it notifies the change about the change in the counter state to the main module. So this is our counter provider and notifier which we are going to use. Very simple and very concise, so easy to understand. And let's move on to our main module. So first we will remove the counter that is being used here, because we are not going to use this anymore. In fact, we are not going to use the complete state part. So what we can do is that we can directly use this UI, this scaffold we can directly use in the stateless widget part and completely remove the stateful widget part. So this stateful widget we no more need, and here we have to make some changes. So for now we will put some placeholders here so that there is no error message. So it's showing blue because we need to add const modifier. We still have some error. Okay, this semicolon we have to remove, and that's it. Now we don't have any error, and we have successfully removed the stateful part of the application. No more states being used inside the main module. So here now we have to import the provider package. So this is easier way if you are facing difficulty in okay. So it was inside the provider directory, so we had to write 2 times provider. That's what I was missing. Anyways, so first thing that we have to do is that we have to import the provider from the provider package, and next thing that we have to do is that we have to okay, so one thing I forgot to discuss is that there are multiple types of providers, and we are going to use a specific type of provider. So we are going to use the provider that is Selector Provider. And Selector Provider and Consumer Provider are very similar. Consumer Provider basically rebuilds when there is a change in state in a class, and Selector Provider rebuilds the application when rebuilds the UI when there is change in a specific property of a class. So Selector Provider allows us to filter the property, and this is the main difference between Selector Provider and Consumer Provider. So we are going to use Selector Provider, and this is more suitable for our requirement. Depending on the requirement, we can select the specific provider, and let's get started with Selector Provider now. So first of all, we need to add the counter provider package here that we created earlier. And this is suggesting us counter provider package, so just we have to select it. Next thing that we have to do is that we have to see that which property we have to update. So we will be putting the counter property in this text widget, and this text widget is basically inside this build, and this build is basically in my app class. So we will wrap the my app class inside the change notifier. So let's do it. So here we are getting option of change notifier provider, and we will be using this change notifier provider, and let's put this app inside change notifier provider. And the way to use change notifier provider is that we have to use the create property, and this is basically a function. So we can either use context here, or we can just use an underscore. Because we don't need to use the context, we will just use a underscore. Underscore is basically a type of placeholder when you don't need any variable or any parameters to be used. Then it is just a way of telling that we don't need to use the parameter, and just for the sake of that, and we cannot like use any other syntax, so we are using here underscore. This is also a type of placeholder. So I think we have to use this inside inside the child property, and in the create property we will be using counter provider. So this counter provider we will be using here, and another property we have to use, that is a child property, and child property will be used. So my app will come under the child property. So this is how we have to wrap this my app inside the change notifier provider widget, and this is the first step that we need to do, because this my app we are going to update whenever there is a change in the counter property of counter provider. And one more wrapping we need to do, and that is, I think we can do around this text widget. Yeah, this will be the suitable place. So we need to use the selector provider here. So selector provider we need to use in this specific syntax. Here we need to use the selector property. Again, here we need to use an underscore, and we will pass a provider property here. And this provider we will use to get the value of counter. So the counter that we are trying to get here, actually we will be using here and I think that's pretty much it. Okay, one more property we have to use, and that is builder property, because this builder property will help us to rebuild. Okay, so the spelling, there's some typo here. Okay, now it's correct. So this is basically the syntax of using the selector. So this selector is basically allowing us to rebuild our text widget whenever there is change in the counter. So it's getting the value of the counter here and it's passing it through the builder and it's updating it. So here we have to, now we can use the counter property here. So now the half of job is done. One more thing we have to do is that we need to create the event. Then only the event that will update the counter in counter provider. So this on pressed event will be used. Earlier we created a placeholder here. Now we will remove that placeholder and we will use the context that we this is basically the context. We can either write here context or we can just put underscore, but basically it's adding a context and this context will be used here. Here we will use our counter provider, and now when we put a dot we will get the option of the inc method that we created here, and we will be calling the inc method using this context of counter provider. And now we can go ahead and we can run our application, and more or less it will work the same. In fact, it will work exactly the same it was working earlier, but with one difference is that it will be using the selector provider rather than the stateful widget, the local stateful widget that it was using earlier. So let's run the app and see how it's working. So we made changes only in 2 to 3 places. We wrapped our my app inside the change notifier provider. We added the change notifier package and the provider package. We wrapped this text widget inside the selector provider, and we use this on pressed event to call the increment counter increment method. So we made only changes in 3 to 4 places, and that's it. Now this provider is very useful when we are using multiple Dart files, that is the multiple modules are there to be used, and we have to keep track of states, and we have to rebuild the UI depending on the change in state. One good application that I can think of is the when we create a side menu and when we change the menu option, we select a menu option, that time we can use this selector provider, and to update the selection of the menu option. So as you can see that the UI is looking more or less same, only the title that I changed is something different, looking different. And if I click the plus button, still the counter is getting increased the same way it was increasing earlier. So functionality wise everything is same, but the flow of counter increment is different, and that is what we did in this complete tutorial. I hope you found this tutorial informative. This providers are very important topic in Flutter, and in next video maybe we will be doing the one more implementation of this selector provider. We will see that how it is used in side menu. We will create a side menu. So if you find this video informative, please do subscribe to the channel, give a thumbs up to this video, and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.